Modern policing developed in England at the beginning of the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution, recognition of the need to treat children as a distinguishable group, and growing numbers of unemployed and homeless youths were among the key events that helped shape juvenile policing in America. The role of juvenile officers is similar to that of officers working with adult offenders, to intervene if the actions of a citizen produce public danger or disorder. Juvenile officers must also have a thorough knowledge of the law, especially the constitutional protections available to juveniles. Juvenile officers operate either as specialists in a police department or as part of the juvenile unit of a police department. The organization of juvenile work depends on the size of the police department, the kind of community in which the department is located, and the amount and quality of resources available in the community. Most courts have held that the Fourth Amendment ban against unreasonable search and seizure applies to juveniles and that illegally seized evidence is inadmissible in a juvenile trial. Most courts have concluded that parents or attorneys need not be present for children to effectively waive their right to remain silent. Discretion is a low-visibility decision made in the administration of adult and juvenile justice. Discretionary decisions are made without guidelines from the police administrator. Numerous factors influence the decisions police make about juvenile offenders, including the seriousness of the offense, the harm inflicted on the victim, and the likelihood that the juvenile will break the law again. Problems with discretion include discrimination, unfairness, and bias toward particular groups of juveniles. The major policing strategies to prevent delinquency include aggressive law enforcement, police in schools, community policing, and problem-oriented policing. Innovation in policing strategies can address the ever-changing nature of juvenile delinquency. Tailoring policing activities to local conditions and engaging the community and other stakeholders shows promise in reducing delinquency. Saturation patrols that include targeting gang areas and arresting members for any law violations have not proven to be effective against gangs. Maintaining the level of intensity and cooperation of the many agencies involved in problem-oriented policing strategies, which are essential to their success, is not easy and requires sustainable funding. Prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys are the key players in the juvenile court. The juvenile prosecutor is the attorney responsible for bringing the state's case against the accused juvenile. The juvenile judge must ensure that the children and families who come before the court receive the proper help. Defense attorneys representing children in the juvenile court play an active and important part in virtually all stages of the proceedings. Many decisions about what happens to a child may occur prior to adjudication. Due to personnel limitations, the juvenile justice system is not able to try every child accused of a crime or status offense. Therefore, diversion programs seem to hold greater hope for the control of delinquency. As a result, such subsystems are statutory intake proceedings, plea bargaining, and other informal adjustments are essential ingredients in the administration of the juvenile justice system. Each year, thousands of youths are transferred to adult courts because of the seriousness of their crimes. This process, known as waiver, is an effort to remove serious offenders from the juvenile process and into the more punitive adult system. Most juvenile experts oppose waiver because it clashes with the rehabilitative ideal and has proven ineffective in reducing juvenile violence. Supporters argue that its increased use can help get violent juvenile offenders off the street, and they point to studies that show that, for the most part, transfer is reserved for the most serious cases and the most serious juvenile offenders. Most jurisdictions have a bifurcated juvenile code system that separates the adjudication hearing from the dispositional hearing. Juveniles alleged to be delinquent have virtually all the constitutional rights given a criminal defendant at trial, except possibly the right to a trial by jury. Juvenile proceedings are generally closed to the public. A number of U.S. Supreme Court decisions have influenced the handling of juveniles at the pre-adjudicatory and trial stages. In re Galt is the key legal case that set out the basic requirements of due process that must be satisfied in juvenile court proceedings. In Roper v. Simmons, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty for juveniles is prohibited because it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. In Graham v. Florida, the court put an end to the practice of life sentences without the possibility of parole for juveniles convicted of non-homicide crimes. The major categories of dispositional choice in juvenile cases are community release, out-of-home placements, fines or restitution, community service, and institutionalization. Although the traditional notion of rehabilitation and treatment as the proper goals for disposition is being questioned, many juvenile codes do require that the court consider the least restrictive alternative. Many state statutes require that juvenile hearings be closed and that the privacy of juvenile records be maintained. This is done to protect the child from public scrutiny and to provide a greater opportunity for rehabilitation. This approach may be inconsistent with the public's interest in taking a closer look at the juvenile justice system.